All right, welcome to the Fantasy War Room. I'm Catastrophe, and we're going to get started. So the goal of this is to go through position by position for the first three rounds and what players were selected, what teams they went to, and what their potential fantasy impacts will be. I'm going to go ahead and start with quarterback. So some of these guys are going to move up the boards, down the boards, or just removed altogether. Cam Ward, he was the self-proclaimed number one pick. There's no change to his fantasy impact. He's still going to be one of those guys that we are going to be drafting. He has no real competition whatsoever for his job. So should be interesting to see what Tennessee actually does with him. Jackson Dart. He is a guy that I'm interested in drafting, but he'll definitely be a late round flyer that you can keep for the following year because with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston there, Jackson Dart in theory should not see the field at all in 2025, 2026. Tyler Shaw. This is an interesting case. There's I've been reading stories about he seems to be the guy who fits what Kellen Moore wants to do in this offense in New Orleans. I don't know what his fantasy impact is going to be initially, but he's going to get on the field. He might get on the field pretty early. They have enough weapons there in New Orleans for him to pass the ball around. It's just going to come down to health of their receivers. Last year they were ransacked with 4 to 6 of their receivers going down over the course of the year. So just don't know what that looks like. There's still some big question marks on Spencer Rattler, who is someone I expect is going to probably get the start when the season begins if Derek Carr is not able to play. But can Tyler Shaw beat him out? I think that's more within the reason of reality there. He is the older prospect that everyone wants to talk about, but he has all the measurables and tangibles and qualities that you're looking for that pocket passer. So should be interesting to see how that plays out. Jalen Milroy going over to Seattle. I actually really like this landing spot for him, playing behind Sam Darnold on what theoretically could be just a 1 year rental for him. They don't have a ton of money tied up into Darnold, so Milroy is going to have an opportunity to play his way into a starting role. Theoretically, he shouldn't get on the field at all this year. Darnold doesn't typically get hurt a lot, so that works in his favor, gives him a chance to actually groom behind him. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out. And then finally, Dylan Gabriel, drafted by Cleveland. Probably one of my favorite landing spots for Gabriel to go. He's in a really good spot to beat out both Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. We'll see how well he develops during the offseason program. There's not going to be a rush for Cleveland to get him on the field quickly. So we'll see what they ultimately do with him. But I do think he has the talent to beat out both Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. All right, moving over to the running backs. Aston Genty, I think this is probably the biggest layup that we're going to get as far as the fantasy football analysis. He lands in one of the better landing spots in general, playing with Pete Carroll. Everyone knows what kind of system Pete Carroll likes to run, and having that workhorse in Genty should be an interesting fit, and he'll be able to outplay that running back room. I think probably earlier rather than later. Uh, Probably one of the favorites of this class, Amari and Hampton, landing in that Jim Harbaugh offense in LA, should be very interesting. J.K. Dobbins is healthy, but everyone knows his track history. He has not always traditionally stayed healthy. Hampton coming in and being that good 1-2 punch should make things very interesting. I do see Hampton and Jim T being two guys who are going to go very early. So not generally my taste in drafting rookie running backs earlier on in the drafts, but he's definitely someone who is more than draftable and should have a pretty significant fantasy impact. Judkins going into Cleveland again, another great landing spot, and that'll be like the theme for everybody going to the Browns. The Browns need help everywhere, and it was very interested in seeing that Cleveland addressed their offense so heavily in the first 2 days. Judkins is going to be a nice mix for what they already have there. They did not bring uh, 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 their slew of running backs back. So this is going to give them a chance to reset. There's still a good free agency market to bolster it up even further, but I think Judkins is in a good position to get himself into a starting role. Trayvon Henderson going to New England. Absolutely love this fit there. I love the landing spot. We talked about Ramondre Stevenson and his workload. He's now one of those guys who one stays healthy and two stays on the field all the time, especially how much he likes to put the ball on the ground. Trayvon Henderson should give them a great opportunity to kind of span out and get some more plays in that offense in general. So definitely curious to see what they end up doing with it. Spanning out to RJ Harvey in Denver. This is one of the stretches for me. I didn't see Harvey as being a player that Sean Payton would have targeted, but it it's going to be interesting. I'll just leave it at that. I don't think it's a bad fit for them. I'm not confident in the fantasy impact of Harvey in Denver. However, it's Sean Payton, so you never know what you're going to get with it. He's definitely going to be more of a late round guy for me if he gets drafted at all, but he's definitely someone to at least keep on the radar. And one of my favorite backs in this class, as far as what he does on the field, is Caleb Johnson. And Pittsburgh went ahead and grabbed him with their third round pick. I mean, it's the Steelers. And I kind of talked about it in various places that Caleb Johnson just looks like a Steeler to me. He reminds me of that body and build and skill set that Jerome Bettis had, except he doesn't have nearly as great hands that Bettis did, but he's a bigger back. He can be explosive through the hole, so it's going to be very interesting to see what he does. I have him rated higher up on my board, especially now that he's signed on with Pittsburgh. So he's definitely going to be one of my favorite guys to grab during the fantasy drafts. Moving over to wide receivers, we had quite a few go off the board. Not all of them are going to have great fantasy impacts, but we'll hit a few of them. McMillan going to Carolina. Honestly, it was not one of those guys I would have thought Carolina was going to go for. I didn't see Carolina really targeting receiver this early in the draft, but the fact that they went out to McMillan just says that, hey, we're looking for a true alpha number one, and they think McMillan might be that guy. If that's the case, and then they're going to have some fun with it. I think McMillan put himself he's got himself in a really good position to be Bryce Young's freaking favorite target. So we'll see how that plays out. Xavier Legette is still there, and as long as he stays healthy, he can carve himself into a true number two or number three. But the receiving core looks a little bit healthier there with McMillan in the wings. Uh, Egbuka going over there to Tampa Bay, not a fan. He was one of my favorite receivers in this draft class, but going to Tampa Bay, not my favorite landing spot for him. Not saying that he's not draftable. I think he absolutely is. He's probably going to end up having to be a late round guy because there's so many mouths to feed there in Tampa Bay. Now, the writing on the wall for me in this one is that they are preparing themselves for the future with Godwin going to be on his way out the door. And since Ibuka is that more that traditional slot receiver type player, and that's where Godwin kind of lives at. I think they're preparing themselves for when Godwin exits at the end of this year, and then they can just slide him in to replace him for the long term. And then keep in mind McMillan is still there, and he's not going to give up that number three spot in year one. At least barring an injury, probably not going to see it. We saw the Packers finally since I think it was 2002 was the last time they drafted a receiver in the first round, and they decided to go Matthew Golden. Uh, I like the landing spot. Kind of talked about it before that the Packers are going to have to bolster their receiving core some more with so many injuries that are constantly happening. They just need to prepare themselves for it. Very interesting selecting Golden. I don't see him as a number one, uh, especially in this offense. I think Jaden Reed still got a firm hold on it as of right now, but he's not a true like wide receiver one type. So, and that might be the case for Green Bay where they just don't have that guy. But I think Golden is going to be an interesting fit. He's definitely one of those draftable guys, probably closer to the back end, but maybe a little bit higher in the mid rounds, just because of how the offense is going to be ran. It should be interesting how they do it. And then Green Bay doubled down and they grabbed Savion Williams out of TCU, which to me was very interesting seeing the Packers double dipping receiver. That tells me a lot, or at least kind of gives you, or kind of tells you to read the tea leaves a bit, that Green Bay doesn't have a ton of confidence in this receiving core, or they plan on changing their scheme up to where they're going to throw the ball a lot more. Savion Williams is not a guy that I see playing a ton of special teams, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they can do that. And that kind of ties me into the what the Texans decide to do, double dipping at receiver as well. And not only double dipping at receiver, they double dipped in the same college. Iowa State, both Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel both go to the Texans. Um, Noel is more of the special teams guy. He won some awards there playing freaking special teams as a punt returner. So the likelihood is they'll probably still do the same thing in Houston, but he does have a ton of speed. So he'll be able to bring some life there in the Texans offense. And then Jaden Higgins is going to be a really good complement to Nico Collins. Collins has cemented himself as a true X receiver, so that position is locked in. Higgins is going to be able to be a great complement playing on the opposite side. And if Tank Dell gets himself freaking healthy, he'll be able to play primarily out of the slot, but you'll see those guys probably rotate out more often than not. Moving into Chicago with Luther Burden, one of the favorites of this class. Uh, I don't know where I land on Burton, and not because of the player, but the landing spot. I think Chicago just has so many mouths to feed now. They've surrounded Caleb Williams with so much that now this is going to be the year in year two where we're going to see either Williams succeed or fail. They completely rebuilt this offensive line from scratch, brought in all these names, drafted some guys that they put themselves in a really good position to protect their quarterback. Now they bring in additional weapons. We're going to talk about what they did on the tight end spot shortly, but Luther Burden coming in the second round, you just add in more offensive weapons. So it's very, very interesting what they're going to do there. But however, they got Roma Dunze there. They got more that's there. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Chicago right now, and keep in mind that Cole Kmet is also still there. So there are a lot of options for Caleb Williams to get the ball out too. So I'm very curious to see how Chicago ends up playing that out. Uh, Probably one of my favorite landing spot picks is Trey Harris in LA. We kind of talked about that Herbert needs more weapons to throw to. McConkey was a man among boys last year, and they just needed more. They needed more to throw to. Trey Harris is going to give them that secondary option, that true secondary option that's out there, and we'll see what they end up doing with. But it's a great landing spot for him, and I think between Trey Harris and Amari Hampton, you got two premier rookies that should have some eyes on them in year one. And we'll see how that plays out. Definitely more of a late round guy, not somebody I want to invest freaking very, very, very heavily in, but he's absolutely on my radar. A guy who is high on my list is Jack Beck. I really love this landing spot in Vegas. That got Ashton Genty. He's gonna do Ashton Genty things. But the fact that the Raiders brought in another weapon to throw to with Geno Smith out there, who's not the most prolific of passers, but he can get the ball out. And it's going to be good to see him have some more weapons to throw to. And now they have a full complement there across the board on the offensive side with Geno Smith, Ashton Genty now probably working him way into that true RB1 or just maybe even a one alpha. We'll see how that ends up playing out. Brock Bowers is still a man. I still think he'll be either the main outlet to Geno Smith, or he'll be a 1B. But Jack Beck should be a very interesting addition to this offense, and we'll see how all those pieces end up working out. Moving over to New England, Kyle Williams. I think this is going to be interesting with New England. New England has had just a bunch of names. Guys who have some very interesting ceilings, but some non-existent floors. Kyle Williams is one of those guys who might actually come in and have a more substantial floor in comparison to the other receivers that are there. They did a very good job to me in New England bringing in those pieces to protect Drake May, and now gave him a new weapon, a new toy in Kyle Williams. I'm curious to see how that plays out. I think Williams is going to slot himself in as being the primary target early on, which means he's going to have some good fantasy value right from the beginning. So like that landing spot. Got some other picks there. You got Tasala out there in Detroit. No real fantasy impact for me. Not draftable. Pat Bryant for Denver. No go for me as well. I just don't think that Sean Payton's going to throw the ball nearly enough for it to really matter. And then Minnesota going Ty Felton. Again, no real fantasy impact for me on this side. If you're going to take a stab at them, it'll be late round, very last round of the draft, just to see what happens injury wise. But I'm not really looking at those guys on the back end. All right, moving into tight ends. First tight end off the board was Colston Loveland. Going to Chicago, I am very surprised at Chicago going tight end in the first round, but I'm also not that surprised. Um, I thought Cole Kmet did a pretty good job given what the Chicago offense was in general last year. So that was a bit surprising, but more shocking that they went Loveland instead of Warren. That could tell you a lot. But there are a lot of experts out there that they had Loveland and Warren going 1-2, and you can mix and match them whichever way you want to go. I like Loveland in general and probably going to have a pretty healthy share of him across all my leagues. I think it's a pretty good landing spot for him. And for the tight end position, you don't have to do a ton to end up being a top tight end. So I think Loveland is in a really good spot to give us some pretty significant fantasy value. Uh, the number one tight end fantasy wise from this class is going to be Warren for my Colts. I mean, you could not have landed in a better spot, regardless of who's going to be playing quarterback, whether it's Richardson or Daniel Jones. We have another weapon to throw to, someone to get cover that short to intermediate work, which we've been looking for and needing for a while. And Warren's going to be able to bring that to us. He can play all over the line between freaking the interior. He can play in the slot. He can play outside. You can put him in the backfield if you want to. There's going to be so many ways to utilize Warren. So he's going to be a guy who probably is going to end up getting drafted pretty early, and I'm honestly okay with that. Uh, Mason Taylor going out there to New York. Again, I think this is a really good landing spot for a tight end. I think he should probably go a little bit earlier because of the landing spot. He's gonna be a great weapon for a young freaking quarterback and in an offense that doesn't have a ton of weapons to throw to. He'll be a good player to freaking to take advantage of. The Rams going Terrence Ferguson. Again, I like the landing spot. I think that he can actually produce in this offense with the number of departures they had in their passing game. He should be able to produce pretty early on. I'm not expecting him to be a top 10 tight end, but you're not expecting that at all in a Rams offense in general. But he should be able to produce on some significant weeks, matchup dependent, but he'll be able to do. I think he can do some damage. Uh, Elijah Arroyo going out in Seattle. Again, young weapon going out there for Sam Darnold. We know Sam Darnold can throw to his freaking tight ends. We'll see how he works in the Seattle offense. Not expecting top 10, top 12 performance from him, but he's going to be a guy that can easily play as your primary freaking tight end. He's also flex eligible, so I'm not going to put that past him either. So very good value that is there. And then last up, Harold Fannin Jr. going to Cleveland again. Cleveland just continues to bolster this offense. Gonna give whoever's throwing the ball plenty of weapons to go to. And we'll see how the ultimate plays out. Again, not looking at a guy who's going to be super fantasy relevant, but he's going to have opportunities that are there. That the Browns have not been the best team when it comes to tight ends staying healthy, so he'll have opportunities there. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. But there is some absolute fantasy value there, and definitely someone who can be drafted. Uh, Overall, I think the first three rounds that went very well for the fantasy football side. We will see how these teams freaking mesh and how they're and how the rest of the draft end up going. Uh, Keep in mind that we still got more offseason work to do. There's still free agents that are out there. There's still holes that these teams can fill, and that can change dramatically how these prospects now NFL rookies are going to end up lining up with their teams. Uh, the last piece I'm going to add is on Shedeur Sanders. I see a lot of people are basically giving this guy his funeral because he wasn't drafted in the first three rounds. There are a lot of circumstances that I'm pretty sure are tied into it. Some are more self-inflicted. Some have to do with his dad. Some just teams just don't want to take that risk and play that card with a personality and background that Sanders has. I don't really know. If Sanders ends up landing with one of those teams that uh, he can carve himself out into a starting role in year one, great. Right now, we saw almost every team that could potentially need a quarterback either this year or next year already take one. The only team left to me outside of Pittsburgh, who right now is just Mason Rudolph, is the Rams. I think that we're at a stage now where Matt Stafford is on borrowed time. He's on the verge of retiring. I don't think he has very many years left, even if it's just this year. If Sanders can find his way in LA to back up Matt Stafford, I think that'll be a great spot for him. Uh, if he lands in Pittsburgh, he's in a good position to start year one. Pittsburgh has made it very clear that they want to start the offseason with four quarterbacks. They still only have two. There's still some opportunity left for him to get drafted today. We got 4 rounds to get through. I would not be stressing too much about when he actually goes to, because I think he's going to go. I don't think he's going to go undrafted because I do think that will be a massive story if Sanders goes undrafted. That will be a huge monumental story. I don't think that that'll be the case. I think he will get drafted. It's just going to be a question of where does he go. Uh, my thought is I still think he should just go to Pittsburgh. I think the culture there is going to put him in check if he needs to be in check, and if not, then he'll be fine. We'll play it by ear. But my thoughts on Sanders, his talent, what he put on tape, everyone knows all the stuff. There's nothing I can tell you that's going to be anything different. I think he is in a good position to where he can produce day one if he goes to a team that needs a quarterback to start day one. And right now, the only team left really is freaking Pittsburgh, who does not have an entrenched starter. The other conversation that he can always just go to a team and be a backup. He can go to a team like the Dolphins, who has their starter entrenched in Tua, but Tua has an injury history, despite the fact that he got through last year without missing a game. That could be a spot for him. He could go to he can go to a team like Buffalo, or he can go to Kansas City. He can go to a team where he can just be a backup and learn and grow from that aspect, and maybe have some trade value later on. I don't know. I don't see Sanders as being a guy who should be a backup quarterback. I feel like he should be a starting quarterback, regardless of what his circumstances surrounding why he didn't go in the first three rounds. To me, he's a guy who should be starting. And maybe he just goes to a team where he can just play the backup role. Now, it is not out of the realm of possibility. Not out of the realm of possibility that Sanders goes to a team who already drafted a quarterback. Keep that in mind. There is a world where he can go to one of the teams who have already drafted a quarterback. It is not uncommon for a team to draft two QBs in the same class. It's not uncommon. Now, we've seen it primarily happen where they draft a quarterback in the first round and they draft another quarterback later on in the draft. We've seen it happen multiple times. And for me, I think that system works very well. I don't think that'll happen in this case because you got Tennessee taking Cam Ward. I don't see Sanders going to Tennessee. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, but stranger things have happened. Uh, it could happen in New York. It could. I don't think it will. But it's not the strangest thing that's ever happened in the NFL. So, yeah, you never know with it. But that could happen. I think it'll more likely to happen in one of the other teams like New Orleans. I could see that those two guys competing, best player, just go for it, see what happens with it. I don't see it happening in Seattle. Seattle really, Jalen Milroe is already in a good spot, and they don't need to bring in Sanders as a backup option. I just don't see it needed. Uh, Cleveland is the only team that I genuinely just don't see them taking Sanders under any circumstance. He can be available in the seventh round, and I still don't see Cleveland taking him. I think that there is some behind the scenes bad blood between Cleveland and the Sanders family. That's just my personal opinion, and I just don't see it happening at all. So maybe they figure it out, maybe they don't. I mean, we'll see how the rest of the draft goes. But that's it for the War Room. I think that overall the teams did a very good job filling several positions of need. They filled some holes. They prepared themselves for the future in a lot of cases as well. So we'll see what they ultimately end up doing this season. Keep in mind, free agency is going to be back up and running when the draft is done, and there's still going to be some holes that need to be filled. And probably the best place to do that is in free agency. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up. It's been a great first three rounds. Let's knock out the last four and let's see what the fantasy football season gives us. Later.